This is Zach Handel as your guide, and welcome to Zoo Tours. 1, 2, 3, hit it! Welcome back to our second round trip to Kentucky, but first, as now per usual, it's time for Zoo Tours Trivia. Last week I had you guys identify this species from a cropped photo, and it is the potto, a nocturnal prosimian found in the dense tropical rainforest of Central Africa. They usually grow to be just over a foot long and weigh 2 to 3 pounds. They are omnivores and feed on nectar, insects, snails, and more. They spend their lives in the trees and are equipped with special blood vessels that allows a strong lasting grip. So good job to all those who guessed correctly and rather quickly. This week we're playing something called Name That Zoo, where I tell you major characteristics or accomplishments of various parks, and you have to tell me what zoo or aquarium I'm talking about. Okay, here we go. We are currently home to North America's largest population of gorillas. What is this zoo? Leave your guess below and I'll tell you the answer next week. Back here in Louisville, last time we covered a little pocket exhibit called the Cats of the Americas that displayed a few rescued animals. Now it's time to go back towards the entrance and show you an area that I probably should have started out with. The African Savannah, or Africa, whatever, the zoo refers to it as both. They designate this as their anchor attraction because the first thing that guests see on their trip is a majority of their many beloved animals. And it is the largest attraction in the zoo, covering 9.5 of their 134 acres. This is one of the few areas we'll highlight where nearly every single animal actually shows up and in some cases puts on a show for the camera. So yeah, we'll see some pretty brief but entertaining fights in this area, but mainly on Wednesday, and you'll find out what I'm talking about when that day comes. We'll get a look at these African stars from some pretty unique angles. I'll show off an important recently renovated exhibit those in the online zoo community have been waiting to see, and we'll run into at least one pretty unexpected surprise along the way. So let's go through the breakdown of Louisville's Africa. I couldn't find anything online stating when Africa opened, but based on its design, it wouldn't surprise me if parts of it opened with the zoo in 1969. There are 18 individual exhibits displaying 20 species with a total of around 45 animals, 4 of which are endangered. Its greatest strength is that it's home to many of their star animals that everybody knows and loves, and nearly all of the enclosures are more than adequate for their residents, mostly based on size. But there are some things that need work. For one, it's starting to show its age, mainly when it comes to the older style fence lines as you'll see, and their elephant complex needs the most work of them all. To be fair, this is a shot before the recent renovation, which doubled the size of the exhibit, but still, it needs some work. Luckily, however, this will all be resolved in their upcoming master plan. Another elephant yard will be added, and if you look closely, you'll see that they'll even be able to access a much larger savanna across from them, possibly with the concept of the elephants coexisting with other savanna animals, which rarely happens in zoos. With everything covered, it's now time to go through the African Savannah at the Louisville Zoo. Like I said, it's directly near the entrance and off to the left. Sort of by itself is a very old-fashioned ditch labeled as the Ghost of Madagascar. You can circle all around it and hopefully you'd find ring-tailed lemurs. Of course, the most common animal on this tour was a no-show, but luckily they can be found at any other zoo. So here's a clip of one so the species isn't entirely ignored. As you move along, you'll see something that's too big to miss. This is an 11,000 square foot sandy and muddy yard with a viewing area that goes along the entire front and left side, and it's home to my personal Louisville favorite. This is Cindy, the 34-year-old southern white rhinoceros. So why is she my favorite? Well, hopefully some of my early subscribers recognize her, because for a while, she starred as the intro to many of my tours. She's been alone for a couple of years now, but luckily that just changed when a 3-year-old male named Letterman came to the zoo in May of 2018 from the wilds in Ohio. which I'd like to add is an absolutely fantastic place to visit. I mean, look at this. This is just one exhibit. Anyways, back on track. One cool thing about Cindy is to her, there's no such thing as getting too close to her fans. Right across from the zoo's only rhinos is a 9,000 square foot yard of a similar biome. It's home to something smaller, but a lot less gentler. The Warthog. Digger and Riggs to be specific. They arrived at the zoo in 2017 from the Erie Zoo in Pennsylvania, giving you an aggressive preview of what's to come next week. Directly next to them is a much lusher pocket exhibit whose inhabitant can be easily missed. So before just passing by, look down and you might see a wattled crane. There we go. Hi there. Alright, moving on. Following is a short but sweet building known as the Giraffe House, with 3 larger indoor exhibits that follow along one wall. The first one is labeled as a copy, which is typically known as a rocky hill along the African veldt. It was once home to pygmy falcons and its current residents, which are the elephant-related, expert rock climbing, Hyrax. The second exhibit is called the Birds of Africa, but I'd first like to mention that not too long ago, it was actually home to the Northeast Asian native stellar sea eagle, who yes, now have a much better home in the award-winning Glacier Run exhibit. Their former home in the Giraffe House was renovated a bit and now is home to more geographically appropriate birds that were moved over from the South America attraction, and they are the black stork and the critically endangered Waldrapp or northern bald ibis. And the final display down the hall fulfills the building's name. Some people like to view giraffes from above or at eye level, but I much prefer to see them from below, because there's nothing better than this view. I mean, look at that. Beautiful. Regardless of the views, it's always nice to be able to see giraffes year-round like in here. Is this it? Of course not. The wall on the furthest end of the hall gives you a nice preview of their entire exhibit. So let's follow them on the plains. As expected for giraffes, their home is a large savanna. The yard is 40,000 square feet, which is just about an acre large, ranking it as the second biggest exhibit in the zoo. In between you and the animals is a good-sized watering hole, and another viewing area is on the opposite side. It's actually home to 4 species. First, obviously we have the Masai Giraffe, the tallest of all the giraffes, and with great height comes great neck power, as they were displaying here, but again, more of this on Wednesday. They also live with the white stork, who was previously displayed with the neighboring bongos. There's the Ruppell's Griffon vulture, the highest flying bird in the world, elevating up to a towering 37,000 feet in the air. And then there's the East African or gray crowned crane, another former resident to the bongos. Guess they have a problem with birds. Anyways, here's one more look before we continue, but we will run into this later on. Further down and to the right is the previously mentioned forest antelope's home, a nice, well-shaded yard that once contained ostriches and gazelles. Today it displays, more specifically, the eastern bongo, a critically endangered species with a wild population of 100 individuals. Their zoo population, however, is around 600, and luckily Louisville is adding to those numbers when they had 2 calves born in 2017. It's nice that this exhibit allows you to get this close. Don't touch them though, because according to the belief of the native people in the bongo's natural range, you'll have seizure-like spasms if you do. Their next-door neighbors have a not-so-shaded yard, which is more appropriate for the desert-dwelling Addax, another critically endangered species that the zoo is helping out as well. Within the last 5 years, 2 calves were born at the zoo, adding to the species population of around 3,000. Next up is the highlight of the savannah, even though it's the thing I mentioned earlier that needs most work on in renovations. This is the elephant complex, and in 2015 it was expanded to more than double its size, from nearly 13,000 square feet to 27,000. They also added this unusual looking structure that the zoo calls flexible gating that could be used to facilitate and manage a new calf. Around here you'd find 2 gentle giants. First is Mickey, a 32-year-old African bush elephant from Zimbabwe. Her companion, however, is something unexpected. It gives this African experience an Asian twist. I'm referring to Punch, another female that's an Indian elephant. She is 48 years old and came to the zoo in 1973 from Thailand. Soon, it won't just be the two of them. In March of 2018, the zoo announced that Mickey is pregnant with her second cat. Who's the father? Well, the public has yet to get that answer. Regardless, Louisville will welcome another elephant to the family in the summer of 2019. Even after the attraction's peak, there's still more attention-grabbing things to come. In the middle of the African Savannah is everyone's favorite drooling hoofstock, the Dromedary Camel. Along with the elephant renovations, the zoo also added the opportunity for guests to take a ride around on their backs. The path takes you into a sort of pocket-like plaza that comes to a dead end. You get a different view of the savannah, and it's also the location where you can feed the giraffes. That's not just what brings you in here though, it's the sounds. In this old-fashioned exhibit, you are guaranteed to hear the roars of Kariba, the 19-year-old lioness, who is currently alone after the passing of Kenya in 2017, who I was also glad to have part of my earlier intros. I didn't really show the design too well, so here's a panorama of it. It shows you just how close the predators are to their prey, and probably explains why these two roared so much. Once you're done hearing the song of the lion, which you can hear from miles away, you are backtracked onto the main path and are immediately met with a 27,000 square foot rough gravel stocked yard that's home to the lesser known Hartmann's mountain zebra, which are known to live in arid conditions that basically look like this. Going on, if you're with a family that has young members, you can stop at the Boma African Petting Zoo where you can interact with many of their Nigerian dwarf goats. And now it's time to go through the final region, the African Outpost. It has one of the zoo's main cafes where the outdoor dining space used to give you this view. This is the former monkey island that was home to the country's only brown woolly monkeys, but recently it was completely overhauled to make improvements from the zoo's master plan. It will soon be the Colobus Crossing, where colobus monkeys will be able to wander above your heads in many ways like no other zoo has done before. Within 7 to 10 years, the entire north side of the African region will be turned into the Primate Passage, where other primates will be able to jump from exhibit to exhibit as they crawl through an elevated tunnel system. And now the end of Africa goes out in a cute fashion. It's a small hut disguised to look as if it was made out of dried mud. There's one outdoor and two indoor exhibits displaying some of Africa's most famous burrowing animals. On the right side we have an all-indoor display for the naked mole rat, and to the left is another indoor exhibit that comes with the outdoor yard, which was blocked off that day to most likely give the animals a chance to breed. But these two didn't seem to pay mind to that warning. Just because it's easier to hop over a bunch of tape than it is to read, doesn't mean you should do it. Especially when it's interrupting, let's just say, their private time. Even though I couldn't get near these meerkats, I was still able to get a close-up of this adorable bunch. And we have come to the ends of Africa. As always, thank you so much for watching, but before you go, I have a few messages to say. First, if you'd like to stay on course with us as we go through every area in a zoo, you can sub to the page and check out all that you may have missed. Next, I'd like to say that Zoo Tours is now on Facebook. There you can also keep up with all of the episodes and get a more in-depth look at the featured areas through exhibits and personal animal portraits taken by me. And lastly, and most importantly, I believe it's time for Zoo Tours to expand and to expand now. And if I want to do that, I need your help fulfilling requests. If you want to help, you can click on the link above and help support the campaign Zoo Films to San Diego, so I can show off some of the zoos that you truly want to see. Well, I'm all out of things to bug you guys with. Next week, you will actually hear from me twice. So here's a preview of the next tour.